All right, so it's recording now. Guys, pay attention to these presentations as there could be some questions about them on the final exam. All right, so we should be recording now, and you guys have the audio, and go ahead.
Hello? You can hear me, right? Okay. All right. Okay, so what we're demonstrating here is Bash Snippets. My name's Andrew Skerlock, and I'm with Vito and Matt. So what is Bash Snippets? It's a collection of Bash scripts that perform different functions that take place in the terminal. This is very good for people who use the terminal frequently. Bash Snippets is like, it kind of acts like an app from your smartphone. You could see the weather, check the stocks, different stuff like that. Here's a different list of commands that you could run with Bash Snippets. We've got cheats to see the cheat sheet to see all these commands. We can back stuff up through the cloud. We can encrypt and decrypt files. There's all types of stuff we can do. You can look at the stocks. You can shorten URLs. You can actually look at the song lyrics for certain songs and different stuff like that. We'll show that stuff in the demo. And then Matt's going to explain how to install it.
The installation is really easy. First, you just have to type in that command, which is sudo apt-get install git. And then after that, you have to install the Git or whatever, GIT, I don't really know which one it is, repository using that clone link. It's just a GitHub link. And then after that, you have to cd into the bash snippets directory that was made. And then after that, make sure your Git is checkout is to the latest release of it. And then you have to install all the bash snippets, and then there's a ton of them. You don't have to install all of them, but you'll just type in Y or for yes for the ones that you'd like to install.
And then, obviously, to do this, we need to have an internet connection to install it from the clone. And there's 19 different tools to use. Like the tools, like I said, were like the weather, the stocks, or create shorter URLs, different stuff like that. And they've all got their own implementation into the terminal. And Vito's going to demonstrate it on the VM now.
So you guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to open up your terminal window, and you're going to want to cd into your bash snippets directory in order to run some of these bash snippets. We're not going to go through all 19 because that would be time consuming. So we're just going to kind of demo a few. So first one is cryptocurrency. So this one will basically demonstrate, it'll list out all the different currencies and their prices and just their progress or their performance recently. It takes a second and it kind of has to tabulate, but it should appear momentarily.
And with stocks being like a huge thing going on right now, this is very useful too.
So you have Bitcoin, Ethereum, so on and so forth, Dogecoin. Another one is a currency converter. So let's say we'll run the currency converter. Again, it takes time to tabulate. So you have your base currency, which is US dollars, and the abbreviation is USD. And you're trying to exchange it to, let's say, euros, so EUR. And let's say you're trying to exchange, $100, just as an example. And it will give you the exchange, or what the exchange is between the two currencies. Another one would be, as Andrew mentioned, the lyrics. So one thing I've noticed when playing around with this for lyrics, it's generally going to use older songs. So we'll take this song, and it'll give you all of the lyrics. One moment. The lyrics bash snippet generally takes longer. There you go. And then the last one that we'll kind of demo is weather. So it tells you the weather. You have to enter in the location. So we'll pick Hammond, Indiana. It'll tabulate, and I'll put the weather.
The weather must be nice. I hear those birds outside, so the windows are open, huh?
Yeah. So, and that was kind of the project. That's kind of the gist of our project. And then regarding the Hadoop aspect of our project, that was something we struggled with, and we couldn't really get it working. We had difficulty installing the software, and at this point, I don't think we have much to present.
And that's it from us.
All right, so then this is your official presentation on Project A and Project B.
Correct. Minus I think Project A was the Hadoop, right? And then Project B was.
Yeah, it was.
Sure, Project A. They're both worth the same. Okay, so it's 5% of
Right.
your grade,
Okay.
each one. All right, okay, so that's then your presentation. All right, are there any questions for this group, guys?
I had one. So when you install the bash snippets, there's no additional configuration. It's just ready to go out of the box like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so. I'll share my screen here again, and I'll show you.
The extent of the configuration is choosing which ones you'd like to add to it.
Right. So on this screen here, like you've got all the different
Yeah.
bash snippets to install, like
Like
the 19 different, 17 different.
if you didn't want to install the lyrics one, you didn't have to, but
Is there like a way also to go out and get
Additional
other
ones.
tools? Yeah.
I believe so. It's a GitHub that actually has it supplied. So like if they update it, I'm sure it'll go straight to this link.
It's pretty. Once you have it downloaded and installed onto the terminal, it's pretty plug and play. It's very simple and straightforward. Not a whole lot of configurations is required once the initial install is complete.
So as far as sysadmin, is there one of those scripts that is more focused on like sysadmin? Because lyrics, okay, if you're bored, I get, you
probably the Cloud Up.
not an old song, by the way.
Yeah, it's got on there the encrypting and decrypting files and different things like that.
As well.
You can encrypt and decrypt with it.
Yeah, you can encrypt and decrypt files. You can back up repositories of the bit bucket. Right.
Okay. All right.
You could transfer files as well, and
Okay.
You can check ciphers as well, which is pretty cool from a website.
All right. Great. All right. So, who wants to go next?
My group is ready to go for the Hadoop part.
Okay, Lucas. Okay, so you guys then just state the names of your group members and then go ahead and start.
My teammates are Moaz, Shad, and Stephen Kirby.
Who? I'm sorry. Who was the first person?
Moaz.
Who? I'm sorry.
I'll type their names out.
Name's Moaz.
Oh yeah. All right. Sorry. Muaz, right? Yeah. If you can just put it on a slide or something, that'd be great.
Oh. And like I said, we have the Hadoop part ready.
Yeah, just somewhere. So
it would just take
put
time
it
to.
in the chat. Okay.
Would we be able to? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Would we be able to go with? Would we be able to go with the B presentation on Wednesday?
Yeah, you can break them up. Just state, the names of your teammates. So Steven, Kirby, Lucas, Antonio, and Muaz Shad. Okay, and you're presenting Hadoop today. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Go ahead then.
Okay. So here we go. Oh, I don't think I shared the right screen. Okay, can you see the LibreOffice?
Yes, I can see this, the document. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the first step for installing Hadoop, we installed SSH on a server, then PDSH. We had to modify the .bashrc file. And then once that was set, we went and generated an SSH key and then saved that. We had to authorize the localhost on SSH, install Java Development Kit 8. And then I went and we went with Hadoop 3.2.1. We were having issues with the Hadoop and the link that was provided. So we went with that. So it has a kind of a different directory setup than that. So then there was a matter of, once we had the initial configuration all set up, we powered down our virtual machine, made a clone for the slave node, turned that on, and then we copied the SSH key into the slave node. Oh, sorry, that's actually further down. Yeah, and then we made the copy after we finished our initial configuration. We copied the key over. For some reason, the RCMD type kept changing back to RSH, even though in the bash file we had made it SSH by default. So we had to change that again. And then starting Hadoop on the master node, we had to start the node manager and the resource manager and the name node. Then we started yarn on both of them. And let me take you to the master node here. Did my window change to the virtual machine?
Yeah, you did.
Do either of you guys want to add anything before I demo this?
There's a lot of, I personally had a lot of connection issues when trying to get the single to work, but you can see Lucas resolved all of those in his case.
Yeah. Anything, Steve, you wanted to say?
Not really. The single didn't really work well for me either.
Right. Setting up the single node involves, cheating the system to a way. So I think there were a lot of errors there. But all right, so after everything was started, and here's our slave node running as well. I'll refresh this page to show that they're still online. You can see we have 2 active nodes. We've got the master and the slave running. And then we then went to the Gutenberg project and downloaded Gulliver's Travels and Ulysses. We copied that into the, I have a bunch of windows open here, sorry. We then copied those files into the Hadoop's file structure. And then we ran the map and reduce program that was provided to us. And then the output can be seen. I have it open on a third one actually. Sorry. In one of these, I had the command saved so I could show it off again. Yeah, we had the mapper and the reducer. I'll show you the. Why isn't the mapper there? Oh, it's the wrong directory. I apologize. I thought I had this ready to go. Okay, so here is, we ran the text through the mapper and reducer program. And then this is the output of that. And as you can see, it counted all the words in both of them. It mapped it and then reduced it. And then I output it into a results file here. So you can see everything. And then as a kind of a last step, I was also going to attempt to run it again through a third file we downloaded. So I saved the command in here. We download the Brothers Karamazov. Existed. And you can see the MapReduce and all that's working.
Yeah, this part just takes a little time.
It does. So that's running, obviously. Okay, and then we should be able to see it in here. Yep, and there we go. It went through the entire Brothers Karamazov, and mapped all the words and reduced them to showing the frequency. Apparently the word prosecutor comes up a lot. And that's about it.
Perfect.
Open it to questions.
Job, guys. Excellent job. And this is I don't know if students noticed, this is a multi-node. So you actually had 2 nodes in the cluster. So it's a cluster, right?
Yeah, I might not have shown that well enough, but yeah, you can see the master node, which is this one, and then the slave is over here.
So you literally built a cluster of 2 Linux computers to do parallel computing. Excellent job. All right. So are there any questions for this group, guys? And as you can see, with Linux, you can do just about anything. So it just takes a little bit of hard work. All right. So I'm not hearing any questions. So usually, we clap, right? So great job, guys. All right. And then you said that your group would present the other project on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else from you guys?
That's about it for me.
Okay. All right. Who would like to go next?
I'd like to go next, Professor.
Okay. Yes, please go ahead. Just again, state the names of your teammates and then start with your projects.
My name is David Higley. I'm the only team member. And I'll start by presenting the Hadoop project.
Yes, go ahead, David.
Mm-hmm. One moment. So right now you should be able to see my terminal. And I created a Hadoop cluster with 3 nodes. one of the nodes is the master node, and 2 of the nodes are worker nodes. And I actually did this because I was experiencing an issue where the master node would execute jobs and that would consume CPU to the point where it wouldn't communicate with the scheduler for the workers, and then that would create errors. So I have 2 workers that only run jobs, and I have the master which only runs the scheduler. So I'll start right now by showing you, I created a script to run the MapReduce job, which will automatically count the words in the first book, count the words in the second book, and then create the document frequency showing the combination of those 2. So I'll run that now. And while this is running, I'll show you the web interface so we can see that it's actually running on 2 nodes. One moment. Let's see. So we'll look at the application here running, and we can see that it's running 2 map jobs, right? And we can see that one of them is running on Hadoop Worker 2, and the other one is running, let's see, also on Hadoop Worker 2. So the scheduler decided it was going to run both jobs on the same node, but there are 2 nodes in this cluster that will run jobs. So if we come back here, we can actually see it finished running the first book. Oh, give me 1 second. So we can see here, it finished running the MapReduce job on the first book, and it output it to book 1. And then now it's running book 2, right? And it gives us this URL here to look at the job. And we can see it's already 50% done mapping that. So I'll go ahead and wait here while it finishes running the MapReduce. So I'll show you now where we can see in the Hadoop file system the results so far that we have. So right now we can see this is the user Hadoop directory in the Hadoop HDFS. And we can see that we have this counted directory. And inside of that, we have book 1, where we can see part 0. And we can actually see there's the beginning of the file that it started to count different occurrences of words in the file. And then we can go back here and look at book 2, and we can see that for book 2. And then if we come out here to the top, we'll see this book 1, book 2 DF, which stands for the document frequency. So we can look in that file and we can see that here is the summary of all the words, including those in book 1 and book 2, and how many times they occur. So I'm actually going to go back to the terminal now and show you. We can see in the terminal now it finished running, and it gave us a little preview here, right? We have some data from book 1 and some data from book 2 in this, items that only occur in one or the other. But I actually can use this short bash line to display these sorted by which words have the most occurrences. So I'll do that now. So now we can see here's every word found in both books sorted by how many times it occurs rather than alphabetically. So I can go ahead and go to the end here and see that the is by far the most common, occurring in book 1 in 31,793 instances, and so on and so forth. And we can see, if we look at the DF admin, we can see right here we have 2 live data nodes. We have worker 2 and worker 1. And we can see neither one of those is this master node, which means that the master node will be free to schedule jobs while these 2 worker nodes run them. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Great, great job. Yeah, so guys, go ahead and ask questions. I heard a question.
I was just curious as to how are you able to get it to a point where the user interface part, the GUI, how are you able to get it to where it would actually show the jobs that it was running or completed?
So give me 1 second. I'll show you my web browser again. You can tell me what you're asking about.
Sure, sure.
So are you talking about this screen here?
Yes.
Or are you talking about this screen here?
Both of those, actually.
So this one is enabled by default, and the URL to this is just printed in the console every time you run a job. And I can see the applications here is just a list of every job I've ever run. And that's where I was looking at those details on the job and where it was run. So when you run the job, it prints the URL to view the status to the console.
I see.
And then the one where I'm able to browse the file system, again, that's just a default page. This one's actually running on the master node only, right? We can see that here.
Yep.
And this one just shows you the status of the cluster and lets you, in this file here, browse the distributed file system.
Okay.
So it's just that port number, basically, 9870.
Yeah, every Hadoop installation, port 9870 should have that.
Yeah, I was
Great.
looking at the report. Thank you.
Excellent job. Again, you had a cluster, right? So you built a cluster with Linux. Perfect. Any questions for David, guys? All right, great job. Thank you very much, David. Are you ready to present your other topic or?
Sure,
or no?
I can. Give me 1 second.
Okay, up to you.
1 moment. I'll go ahead and share that now. So my project is going to be using Red Hat Keycloak for remote application access with 2-factor authentication. So the situation is that, you know, through coronavirus and things like that, many users are working from home, and those users require remote access to web applications and internal company resources that, you know, they'd normally be able to access on the internal company network. But users need to access these resources securely. So there are some problems that occur with that. Not all services can be safely exposed to the internet, and the service might not have proper authentication, or users might not choose strong passwords. And these situations, when configured wrong, can result in insecure applications being exposed directly to the internet, which are vulnerable to attackers. So we'll look at using Keycloak to solve this problem. So Keycloak is an application made by Red Hat to orchestrate single sign-on. So this means that it will look at a database of users and authenticate a user once against that database and allow multiple different applications to verify that user's identity across different applications running in that organization. And KeyCloak provides functionality for managing users built in, as well as a ability to be integrated with Active Directory or LDAP, so that if you already have existing Active Directory infrastructure, that can manage the users. And KeyCloak provides functionality for group and permission management, which allows you to assign different access to different users. And KeyCloak can provide an authenticated proxy to internal resources. So this means that the user will access an exposed KeyCloak page, and then that KeyCloak will securely authenticate the user first, and then it will provide them with proxied access to that internal application. So the solution to this is only exposing KeyCloak to the internet, and users must access internal resources through KeyCloak. They can't access them directly, so KeyCloak will ensure the security, and requiring two-factor authentication. So then through this, we get the security of no reliance on each application for secure authentication. So that means we're not relying on the internal authentication of every web service to provide authentication securely. And we have two-factor authentication in case the user has a compromised password to prevent unauthorized access. And then single sign-on allows the user to just sign in once across all the applications, which is just convenient. And then reduced vulnerability to application-specific security issues. So if a internal application has a published security vulnerability, attackers will most likely be unable to exploit that because they'll be unable to directly access the internal application without first authenticating through the proxy. So for an example scenario, I'm going to use KeyCloak to proxy access for Zabbix server monitoring, which I'll use to monitor some network devices in a server. KeyCloak will proxy access to the Zabbix user interface for the user remotely, and Zabbix will verify the user's identity through KeyCloak so that the user won't have to sign in again to Zabbix once they've been proxied through KeyCloak. So for this example, we'll have a Zabbix internal URL, which is the URL that the user would access on the local network. And then the KeyCloak URL will be public, and this is the URL where the user's identity will be verified remotely. And then the external URL of the proxy, this is the URL that the user will type into their browser to access the application remotely. So now I'm going to give a demonstration of this functionality in my web browser. So first, I'll show you the KeyCloak admin console. So for this, we'll have an example company, and the example company has an example user. And the example user wants to access their application remotely. So they'll come here to the proxy external URL, and they'll be presented with this page, which will give them the option to sign in with KeyCloak. So they'll be presented with this KeyCloak authentication page, which they can then input their credentials. And when they click sign in, they'll be prompted for a two-factor authentication code, which then I've pre-generated, so I'll input that now. So once the user provides that two-factor authentication code, then they can log into the application. And we can see here that I'm immediately presented with the Zabbix user interface. I'm not presented with a second login screen, and I have access now. And we can see that if I go to my user settings, it knows who I am. I'm the example user, right? I didn't have to sign in or use an additional identity. And then when I sign out, I'm just brought right back to this page. And then through KeyCloak, it provides the built-in user self-management. So the user can manage their own, they can change their own password and things like this via this manage account link. So I'll sign in here. And again, I have to do this because I signed out earlier. So I'll sign in here. And again, for security, I'll enter that two-factor authentication code. And now we can see, I can see my sessions. So if there was an unauthorized session, that would be visible here, and we could sign out of it remotely. And I can see signing in here. I have two-factor authentication set up, and here's the device that I've created to provide remote two-factor authentication. And so we'll see here that I've set up KeyCloak to enforce two-factor authentication. So the user must use two-factor authentication. So if I go ahead and go here to add user, I'll create a user called test with the email test@higley.dev, and this will be the test user. So we'll create that user, and we'll see right here, the first thing it does is required user actions, configure one-time password. So I'll go ahead in here and set a password of password, which is a terribly insecure password, but we'll use it for this example. So then when I come here, sign out of this page here, I'll go to my proxy URL again, and I want to sign in with my application. I'll type test and password. And we'll see here, I'm immediately prompted to set up two-factor authentication as it's required. So I can go ahead and scan this QR code with my mobile authenticator app, which then provides me the ability to already generate a code right here. And then I can name this device. And we can see here, I'm presented with this page that says forbidden. And that's because if we come here to groups, I have this group called Zabbix, and only users in this Zabbix group can access Zabbix, right? So in members, I have my example user, but I don't have my test user. So my test user is denied access despite being able to authenticate in the proxy. So I can go back, sign in with Keycloak. We can see no matter what, they aren't allowed to access the resource that they don't have permission to access. So then I can go here to the groups, Zabbix, edit members, and we can see again, they're not a member. So if I go to this test user, groups, Zabbix, and I'll have the test user join the Zabbix group. Then we'll see the user is denied access to Zabbix because the user doesn't have Zabbix profile created. So that is caused by the Zabbix internal authentication, which, like I said, this method allows us to ignore that, but it only works if they have a user created, which means that if a user is created to access another internal company application, they can't access this one, which they're not authorized to access. So I'll go ahead and delete that test user now. And we'll see here if I go back to here, manage account, sign in with my example user, which is authorized. I'll sign in with my two-factor authentication code. We can see applications, personal info. I can change my name. I can change my password here, but most importantly, I can go back to this proxy now, sign in with Keycloak, and with one click, I'm presented with the user interface again, signed in as the user who is a member of this Zabbix group and does have permission. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question actually. Is this for use in the internal network, or is this for use, outside from the internet?
So the point of this is to provide external internet-based access to internal resources. So this, server monitoring tool is something that would be available on the local network. But if the user is working from home or they need to check it remotely, then through this Keycloak setup, they can access it securely.
So I understand for internal use, makes sense. For external use, you gave the example of a web server, right? They were accessing like a web server.
Yeah.
So the web server would technically be outside of the organization, and then this would just provide additional control to get to those pages outside where they have to log in. And I sort of understood that they type in all those passwords, the token, and then the application Zabbix gives access, let's say, to the website, that 403 versus 505.
Well, so the design of this is so that the Keycloak would be running inside the company, but that would be the only application exposed to the internet, so that the user...
The only application exposed to the internet, you're saying?
No, so Keycloak would be exposed to the internet.
Yeah, Keycloak.
Zabbix is never...
So here's the question, actually. It boils down to one single question. On the firewall of your company's internal network, right? The firewall that protects you from the outside. Do you have to open a port for this?
Yes, so you'd only open a port for the Keycloak proxy, and that prevents Zabbix from ever being directly exposed to the internet. It's only ever exposed once the user authenticates through Keycloak.
So the firewall has that port open with Keycloak, and and then you open your web browser, go to that port, go through the Keycloak, authenticate, and then the other thing, Zabbix gives you access to the web server inside the network, right?
Yeah, so Keycloak authenticates the user, but it doesn't redirect to the other application. Keycloak is actually a reverse proxy, or is set up as a reverse proxy, so it will actually proxy access. So the other application is never exposed.
Port forwarding, but with authentication in the middle, sort of.
Yeah, so you could think of it like that. It's like authenticated port forwarding. So we ensure that the user is supposed to have access before allowing them remote access.
And it's HTTPS from your browser, correct?
Well, yeah, in a real world scenario, we'd use HTTPS, but I can't create a certificate.
So how is this, let's say, because I would think the other standard alternative to this would just be a VPN. So why is this better than a VPN in your thoughts, or worse, or why do we not use a VPN instead of?
So yeah, the only reason that this is quite comparable to a VPN in terms of functionality, but the main thing with this is just convenience. The user doesn't have to install any software on their computer, and the user doesn't have to be on a trusted computer. They could go to the library and log into this page, and the security would be verified by Keycloak through their identity, so they wouldn't.
Yeah, no need for VPN client. It's just a browser thing.
Correct. Yeah.
I got it. Okay, I see. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Good. That's a good new thing to know about. Appreciate it. Any questions for David, guys?
For the two-factor authentication, is that also an app you have to put on your phone, or is that just it can scan any URL code and it will take you to where that temporary code shows up?
So the two-factor authentication is just it's called TOTP, time-based one-time password, which is like Google Authenticator or Authy. There's a million different. I mean, it is an app that you have to have, but there's a million different apps that provide support for that.
It's not like like Purdue, they have the boiler key. You have to install just the boiler key app.
I see what you're saying. It is kind of like Duo. In Duo, you can go in there and it generates you a code that you can use to log in, and it basically is the same functionality as that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, great job, David. Thank you very much. All right, so who would like to go next?
My partner and I can go next.
All right, so just state the names of your teammates. And
It's just me and my partner, Bart Cius. Or Bartholomew Cius.
Just Bart's fine, really.
And who else? Sorry, who was speaking?
Oh, Gavin McCoy and Bart Cius.
Go ahead, please.
All right, Bart, you want to start the Hadoop?
Sure thing. Okay, so of course we're going to start ours with Hadoop first. Okay, so for our implementation of Hadoop, we have the manager node, which you can see right here, and we have two nodes for which will run which have the books on them that will be run using Hadoop. As you can see here, they show up and they're actively running. And in the Hadoop file system, we have a directory called books, where we added two books, two random books from the Gutenberg project. In order to run it, Hadoop on this, we can run this command, and give it after a few seconds, it runs through it, runs the mapper and reduce Python scripts to map out the total number of words that appear in the books all together. Then it aggregates them into one output in the Hadoop file system called book results. If you navigate to here and click on part 000, click download. Save it. Moment. Right here, and it shows all the total amount of words that appear in the book and how many times they appear. So let's say the word around appears 69 times in all the books combined together. And this is essentially our Hadoop, our implementation of Hadoop. So now let's go to our presentation for project B, which.
No, just great job. Great job. You built a cluster. Guys, do you have any questions for this group on this topic?
No.
And I just, so Professor Kim actually offers a class, ITS 470. It's an elective, but it's actually a parallel computing course where part of it would be Hadoop, obviously, you know, so it's kind of like this, but a whole semester, right? So obviously a lot more, not just Hadoop, other, you know, so I wanted to let you know, if you have an interest in this topic, just, you know, shoot Professor Kim an email. I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you more about this class. Okay, guys, go ahead with your second topic, please.
All right, here's our project B.
All right, so, oh, sorry.
There we go.
So our project's over Puppet Master. I'm Gavin McCoy, and my partner is
Bart Cias. Okay, so what is Puppet Master? Well, Puppet Master is both a software and hardware configuration management tool that can deploy configurations to a wide range of systems. Like Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, it can be used to deploy images to systems on your network, speeding up the system administration process. In addition to computers, it can also push configurations out to routers and also switches.
so some of the uses of Puppet Master is it can gather information from nodes such as operating system, users, network info, and software configuration. It can deploy software images to machines. It's also commonly used to compare machines to see if there's an outlier among them, like an older OS.
So one of the benefits of Puppet Master is that it's open source, so anyone can contribute to it to help improve security and also performance. Puppet Master is also much quicker and efficient at deploying configurations to systems compared to the competition, like Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, which compared to that, Microsoft's implementation of it is more resource intensive compared to Puppet Master. And also Puppet Master can be used to easily retrieve information from the nodes that are connected to it.
So Puppet Master works how you configure it. Some people configure it to be more secure, where it only works on a push basis, where it only pushes to machines. Some like it where they can get more information from it, or like vice versa, where it does both. But essentially how it works is there's a master, which is in charge of managing what happens, and there are puppets, which are controlled by the master. And typically there is a Puppet agent installed on the client, and then software is pushed to it depending what you want. So if it's like a computer in like the HR department, you would want specific software for that. So you would use your HR deployment for it.
All right, and on to the demo. So I'll let Gavin take over from here.
Yeah.
Screen.
Share screen, screen 2, share. All right, can you guys see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So let me just turn both these on real quick. This is our host node. It's where we're going to be making changes to and applying to. And this is actually our Puppet Master server. So first I'm going to go into the manifest. This says what we want to do. So I want to change the node host 1. I want to create a directory, and I want to give it read, write, and execute privileges. And I want to move over a file from the Puppet Master server to the node to simulate deploying software to it. So this is the the file will be deploying to it. I don't know if Professor Calix, if you want us to change the text to anything special.
No, not really. Just do the presentation as you have planned.
Okie dokie. So I'm going to deploy this real quick. So the demo text just says okie dokie. So a lot of times what people will do is they'll use cron like every morning to check if there is any new Puppet Master deployments, and then it'll just run this. And on running it, it will retrieve it. So as you see, there's nothing on the desktop right now. And then there it is. It created the directory file as well as the text file with the text I put in. But obviously, instead of just copying over a text file, you could push installations to it. Also, a really nice feature of Puppet Master is it shows you the hash of all files that are pushed. So that way, if there's a malicious thing going on, that the hashes don't match, so something went on during transportation. And that is Puppet Master.
Okay, so Puppet Masters basically can rewrite the contents of files, correct?
Yeah, it also has some like SNMP features where it can collect information from machines too if you want. It just depends how you configure it. We just had it where it would be a deployment server.
Yeah, so the advantage of that is that everything's a file in Linux, right? So configuration files are files, so you can just rewrite them. What about permissions? So you have to create an account that's like a root on all of those agents. Let's say.
So there's a golden image typically where you would have specific things already on it. So like you'd have just the defaults, but in here you can actually specify accounts that can use it, like who's going to be the owner and what groups are going to be, as well as the permissions with it. You can also create users as well if you want to.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, great, excellent. Any questions for this group, guys?
Yeah,
so
I had one question.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, who wants to go?
Sorry, I'll go ahead. Does Puppet let you manage Windows or only Linux?
It works for Windows as well. It's a little bit more of a hassle because Windows Defender tries to shoot it down a little bit, but you can get it to work with Windows.
Gotcha, thanks.
I had a question as well.
Oh, good.
You mentioned using cron to update the file you want to.
So some people, it all depends how you want to do it. Some people will set up cron on the host, the Puppet node to run the connection test to the agent to see if there's any updates it needs to grab.
Okay.
And then I'll grab it if needed.
Alrighty. Thank you.
No problem. So,
All right, great job, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so who would like to go next?
My group can go next.
All right, thank you. So state the names of your teammates and then start.
I'm Dakota Bailey, and my teammates are Lila Upshaw and Cody Snort. And then I'll go, and then Lila, are you going to share your screen?
Are we starting with the Hadoop though?
Yes.
No.
Oh yeah, let me get
It's view.
Let me get it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, can you guys see me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so here you can see from the web interface, both of my data nodes are connected to the primary. I have H-secondary 1 and secondary 2. They're both connected and raring to go. We go into the browser file system here. We can see it load up. I keep all of the books that we have in under H-user and Gutenberg folders. And here you can see we have our 3 books that we're going to be performing the MapReduce job on. So if we go ahead and go into the terminal here, you can see that I have our command for running the MapReduce job. It uses the jar file to start streaming, and it uses my mapper.py and my reducer.py files under my H-user account. And then it'll save the output under a folder called, we'll go ahead and just call it output 42621 for today's date. And it's going to pull every single book from the Gutenberg folder here that you can see with it using the asterisks. So I'll just pull every single book from that directory. So when we go ahead and run it, it's going to start streaming, and go ahead and take a minute for it to finish going through all 3 books. And then here you can see the stream job finished and its output directory was output 42621. And if we go back to the root directory here within the web interface, we have a new folder called output 42621. And then when we click into it and open the file and download it, save that there. And here you can see that we have the count for each word that appears across all three books. So project between the three books appeared 15 times. You've got, and it just goes on for a very, very long time because there's a lot of words among the three different books. And that is the map reduce job with Hadoop. Are there any questions?
Great job. Did you have a cluster of nodes?
Yes, you can see that under the overview tab, or actually the data nodes tab. So I am on H-primary 1, or H-primary here that you can see here. And if we go under the data nodes tab, you can see it's connected to H-secondary 1 and secondary 2.
Okay, perfect. Excellent job. Any questions for this group, guys? All right, well, yeah, it's similar, right? All right, so are you guys ready to do your second presentation?
Yes, we are. Yep.
Go ahead. Same group members?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So we did our project on configuring and setting up Pi-hole and PyVPN on a Raspberry Pi. Next slide. All right. So the material we used. Next slide. All right. So what you'd need to replicate us would be a Raspberry Pi device, which you could purchase online. And you'd have to have the Pi-hole and PyVPN softwares, which can be downloaded from the respective websites. Next slide. All right, so how we set up the Raspberry Pi? So you're gonna have to configure Raspbian, which is to install the Raspbian OS and download system updates onto your Raspberry Pi device. Then you're gonna wanna set up and configure SSH on your Raspberry Pi so that we can access it remotely. Next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna wanna add a user to the Pi group so that it has the proper permissions to utilize the SSH commands. And then the last thing you want to do is you're going to want to set a static IP address on your Raspberry Pi so that it can operate as a DNS server correctly, and it'll make it easier to SSH into it.
All right, then next is what is a Pi-hole? A Pi-hole is a network-wide ad blocking DNS server that can block ads on a domain level. It's set as a DNS server on your router, and it uses blacklists and regex. A blacklist is just a list of domains / hosts that are involved in showing ads or things like spam. And then regex are just strings that create patterns that match and then helps to block multiple domains. And then next is installing the Pi-hole. It's best to use an Ethernet connection because obviously you'll get more stability with it. You want to confirm that your IP address is still static. Then you're going to want to pick your DNS provider. And for the product, we chose to use DNS Watch. Then you'll want to choose your ad blocking list. What we did for our project is just chose the default option, which was called Stephen Black. And then lastly, you're going to want to configure your black and white list. And then lastly, the PyVPN configuration. So you want to select a user that you want to add to the server. Then you want to choose your VPN service. For us, we chose to use WireGuard. And then you'll specify the port number and then pick to use whether a public IP or to connect to your DNS to the server. And we ended up using our public IP. And now we're going to go ahead and demonstrate it.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Can you guys see everything okay?
Yep.
All right, so just for some starter precursor stuff, I want to first show you my current IP address. I am actually presenting from the Hammond PNW campus. So I'm on the pnw.edu network, which is a 69.51.169.100 IP address. So that's my current IP address. And also if we go to an example website like businessinsider.com, we can see no ad blocking at all yet. Once it fully loads, you'll see ads display at the top and throughout the website. Sometimes they'll display along the sides, as you can see there. However, when we go to open up our WireGuard application, here you can see the config file that I created. I created this user on the actual Pi itself to grant it access to the VPN tunnel. And if we go ahead and activate this configuration file, it's an IP address of 10.6.0.2, which is the subnet of where the Pi is located. It allows any IP addresses, and you can even see when your latest handshake was, along with the transfer rates. So once we're connected to that, if we go back into the terminal, we'll go ahead and run another ipconfig command just to prove that I have a new network adapter, which is titled the same as the configuration tunnel that you saw before, with that 10.6.0.2 IP address. So this shows that I've successfully VPN'd into a separate network. And then when we go ahead and refresh this page here, it finishes loading. And as you can see, no more ad banner at the top and nothing along the sides here. All of those ads are gone. Sometimes, depending on how the website is configured, since it just blocks this domain, it'll just say that the server IP address cannot be found. It just depends on how the web page handles that element. But as you can see, all of the ads are gone. And I can continue to confirm it if we go ahead and type in the IP address of our DNS server, which is the Raspberry Pi. There is an admin web interface for the Pi-hole. By logging into here with our login credentials, you can actually go into a query log and see all of the domains that were either let through or that were blocked automatically. And you can go ahead and manually blacklist domains whenever you need to. So this way, if anything leaks through, because it's not a perfect process, sometimes domains with ads can sneak through because it can't auto-detect it. You can go ahead and hit blacklist, and it'll blacklist it for you for any future ones, and you can just refresh the page. You can see all kinds of other management data as well. You can handle group management. You can make custom black and white lists. Like Lila mentioned before in the presentation, you have your rejects filters, your domain filters. You can add wildcards. You can even add whitelists. Unfortunately, a lot of bigger businesses have realized the use of domain level ad blocking. So sometimes they will send content from the same domain as the ads. So it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty dang close. And you can also use it for more than just ad blocking as well. You can use it for privacy as well if you don't want different domains checking in, and you can use it for more web privacy. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a actually. How does the VPN fit into that?
So the VPN is what gives you the ad blocking capabilities. So where the Pi is located at, you can either configure it to where your router, say at my house, which is where the Pi is currently, only devices connected to that network have domain level ad blocking or domain level domain blocking. So if I were to say be at the university like how I am today, I would not be able to block ads using that Pi-hole because I'm on a completely different network, a completely different setup. The VPN allows me to have access to this DNS server from my house anywhere I go. And it even has a mobile application if you want to use ad blocking on your phone and block ads that way as well.
Okay, so I think it's really two separate things. I think there's a microphone on there. So what I'm you can use the Pi-hole with the DNS filter separately, right? If you're in the local network, but then you have the VPN card just so that you can use it from the outside.
Correct.
Oh, okay. So it's two things separate. Okay, I get it. It doesn't work for ads on TV. Right?
No, I can. It would have to be a TV on. You can either hard set the DNS, or like I said, if you set the DNS server to the Pi on your router at home, it would work on a smart TV and such as well. You would just have to. It would just have to be on your network. That's the only thing.
How about commercials?
Commercials, that I'm not 100% sure on. I've never tried it with commercials. I don't have like live television at my house, so I don't know.
Like I asked you guys the question. So you guys sometimes maybe, and this goes for the whole class, look at the videos that I post online. Do you guys get commercials with those?
I typically run in.
Like, are you watching a video and then all of a sudden it breaks and it shows a commercial
No,
out
I've
of
never
nowhere?
seen ads with your videos.
Okay, all right. So they don't. Yeah.
I mean, you could turn them on.
All right, but no, I don't know. I didn't. It just occurred to me just now that okay, I know YouTube has commercials, so I was wondering how that worked.
I believe you have
Okay.
to enable ads for it to show up.
Say that again, sorry.
I believe with YouTube, as an individual user, you can decide whether if you want to have
I
ads
would set
on
it up.
your account or not.
Yeah,
All right. So it works for TV. It works for websites.
correct.
That's pretty good. Last question, and then other students should ask questions too. What about lag and like slowing down your network? Does it slow down your network?
If it does, it's very marginal. You could see when I refreshed the page after connecting to the VPN, there was no noticeable difference that I could ascertain from when I loaded the web page while off of the VPN and while reloading the web page when I'm on the VPN. I don't notice any noticeable lag or drag on the network. It's usually pretty light. The only risk that you do run into is that it could accidentally auto block a domain where the content is coming from. So if you were to open up a web page off and watch something from Hulu or whatnot, if it auto detects a domain that it thinks it should block and that domain happens to be where the content is, you would have to go into the query logs and whitelist that domain for future use.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not a router, right? The content doesn't go through the pie hole. It's more of like a DNS resolution thing, but your content is just downloading from your own big router to your own computer, right? It's not going through it.
It's not a router. It is purely a local DNS server. The Pi itself is a DNS server.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. Those are my questions. Guys, do you have any questions for this group?
Are you running on an actual Pi, or are you just using a VM?
An actual Raspberry Pi.
Okay. I have one running on a VM.
Oh, nice.
And a follow-up to that, because you said the Raspberry Pi is currently at your house. Is because you have the VPN on, is it how you're able to connect to it through that 10.0 address?
Exactly, yes. I would not be able to access the web interface for the Pi without actually being on my network. So the VPN does give me access to the management console anywhere as well.
Okay.
And there is a phone application that you can use. There's a command where you can do pi VPN-A to create a new user account. And then once that new user account is created, it would be pi VPN-QR. It generates a QR code. And when you download the WireGuard app, you can just scan that QR code and it would give you access to the VPN from your phone.
All right. I'll have to try that. I got a Pi a couple Christmases ago.
Nice.
I just have it set up for games.
Funny thing, Professor Kim and I are working on a book, and it's going to be Learn Cybersecurity with the Raspberry Pi. So, so hopefully some of you guys, when we're back on campus, we can give you copies and you can play with that a little bit. Give us feedback, though.
Oh, I would love that. That would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That would be, yeah.
So we'll use you guys as guinea pigs to criticize our stuff. All right, great. Any other questions for this group, guys? No questions? All right, excellent job. Thank you. All right, so they presented Hadoop and they presented VPN and Pi-hole. All right, next group.
My group would like to go next, please.
All right, go ahead, please. State the names of your teammates and then also start.
So we're going to be doing Hadoop first. It's me, Kyle Johnson, Austin Kimbrell, and Joseph Shapiro. And I believe Austin's going to share his screen for Hadoop.
Oop, my mistake, I was muted. Anyways, can everyone see the web browser here? Hello?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So as you can see, we are also running 2 nodes, as well as the master node, which controls the 2 slaves. And so we'll go ahead, we'll run it. We're running, here, let me show the directory first, show the 3 things that we're going to be using MapReduce on. Maybe. Okay, as you can see, we have 2 Gutenberg books, and then that was just a test text file that I did. So now let's go ahead and run the command. It's going to take a little bit. Then it finished. Here's where we outputted it. So if we do this here, no. We'll just do a cat to it to make it simple. And then we get all the words with their occurrences of all 3 files. And I mean, that's pretty much it, unless you wanted to see something else.
No, that looks good. You know, I know, you know, it's all going to look similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So great job, great job. You did multi-node on this one?
Correct. It's 2 workers and then the master node.
Okay, excellent. Any questions for this group, guys? No questions? All right, go ahead and present your second topic then, please.
Right, okay. I have that on my computer, so let me share the presentation. All right, so we got our presentation. Okay, so for our project, we made a network monitor, and there are names there. So the problems is if you have a network with users who are doing things they shouldn't, or you just want to monitor traffic, but not kind of like not tell them that they're doing things, and you can check for different IPs or something like that, then this is where the program we created comes in, called Green Onion. And what it does is it watches the network for certain IPs, and if it finds an IP that it blacklisted, it won't do anything to the user, and the user can still access it normally. However, it will notify whoever it needs to. So what it does is made with Python. It uses a library called Scapy to sniff the network. The IP list is set up in a JSON file, which I will show, and it it uses an emailing server locally to email whoever it needs to. And here's a little demonstration drawing I just made quickly. So if a user were to ping Google, which is the example I have set up, the user still gets a response. However, the server will notice the ping, and it can email, for instance, admin about this. So now if I go over to the VM, share screen again with VMware. Okay, cool. So what we can do is first I will run it, and it requires sudo, and now it's running on the network. It's sniffing So now if I were to ping Google's DNS, which is 8.8.8, it, the user's fine and it runs. However, over here, it noticed that there was something going on, so it sent an email. So now, if I use the Thunderbird client and I just do get messages, at the very bottom one, this one was sent just now. It says that attention, admin at localhost, which is where this one is sent to go. Someone went to the IP and it's set to read as dns.google.com and requires further attention. So if I were to close this, now here's all the files it uses. So we can go to the logs.pcap file, and this is how it stores it. So now there's some older ones, that's why the time is weird, but it shows you the packet that was sent, and then it filters the packets needed, so only the packets that it saw as bad are put in here. And then you can kind of read through the packet, see who the network was and all that other stuff. And here's the rules and how it's set up. So what it does is it'll look for this IP, like these IP addresses, which are ones set up. And if it sees this IP, it'll mark it as a title with dns.google.com or LinkedIn. And then this one will be sent to admin at localhost, and this one can be sent to hr.localhost. And it basically will just, you can add to the list or remove the list, and if it finds it, it'll just add it to the PCAP file. I feel like I breezed through that pretty quickly, but are there any questions?
So on the, sorry to jump in here. So sorry for the rules file. Those are the blocked or the monitored domain.
Yeah, so I can spend a little more time on this actually. So they're set up as a JSON file, and it has the IP here. And if it finds this IP, like when it's scanning the network, it will mark the name of it as dns.google.com. That's where it gets it right here. And then it will email this person. It's denoted by a comma where the separator is. And this was actually written by us. So if I double click, yeah, if I double click it, I can actually show the code. So it uses the SMTP library for emailing. Scapy is here and Jason are here. And what it'll do is it opens the files and it looks for this. So what it does is, where's main? So how Scapy works, it sniffs the network and every packet goes to print packet, and it will try this. So if it'll try to do this, and if it can, it just passes over it because it's not important. But if the packet's destination can be found, if the packet's destination, or it tries to get the IP because some packets aren't IP packets. So it checks for the IP layer and its destination. If it can get that, then it'll go to recipient and do check bad on destination, which is up here. So this will simply try to get the email and see if it can equal the rules. So that's in the JSON file where it basically tries to find the destination in this list. So if it can find it, it returns something. Otherwise, it'll return null or none, whatever you want to call it in Python. And then it just returns either the email or nothing. And then that goes back down to here. So then if it's none, it doesn't. If it's none, it doesn't do anything. However, if the recipient is real, meaning there was an actual IP and it gave you an email and a location, then it creates an array with split at the comma right here, and it'll create array. The index of 0 will be the site, and then 2 is who it sends the email to. Then it'll notify the email with to incite, and then it also will write it to a PCAP file, or write that packet to a PCAP file. And then over here, it uses the emailing client set up on this server, because the server's running postfix. And it'll create a message. It'll print it'll like print it to show it on the screen. And then because it's emailing, so it tries to send it with localhost. It sets the header, creates the message, and then sends the mail, and then prints that it was sent to the proper person. Otherwise, it returns an error. But then it'll just continue scanning the network.
Yeah, additionally to this, what you could have done is, you know how you're saving into log files, so then you could have had a cron job running another script to parse those log files, do some analysis and create files that get loaded to a website. So you could always just monitor on a
Yeah, and there was some other stuff we tried to do, like Python has a DNS feature on it actually. So in Python you can give it an IP or a domain, and it can reverse it. So that's what we originally tried doing, but some servers don't have a pingable or a gettable IP address. So when you do like a DNS lookup of, like LinkedIn was was the big one I used for the example, and when you give it LinkedIn, it doesn't return an IP address. So that's kind of a problem when you need to look for it. So had we, I don't know, like if there was an easier way to DNS lookup, that would have been a great way to do. So then rather than having a list of IPs, it would just have a list of websites, and then it could figure it out on its own. But one, that would make it slower because it has to do a DNS lookup. And two, it would like if the website doesn't have a pingable DNS server, then it won't return anything, meaning it won't even get checked. So that would be a major problem, or that was a major problem for us.
Okay, great job. And then, as far as the rules, I mean, it's unlimited what you can do. So great.
Yeah.
Any other questions for this group, guys? And then who were the members again of this group?
I will share the slide to show that.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, I can just share this slide because it has our names printed. Here it is. Oh, didn't click it. There you go. Okay. Our names are right here. We're Austin Kimbrell, Kyle Johnson, and Joseph Shapiro.
Okay, got it. Great. Any questions for this group, guys? Any final questions? No? All right, great job. Thank you very much. All right, so I think we have time for just one last group. So who would like to go? And then the rest of you can present on Wednesday. Okay, so who would like to go next?
I would like to go next. I was just wondering if it would be possible to present one presentation today, or would you prefer to have someone that has
No,
both?
that's fine. We only have about 12 minutes left, so probably, one presentation.
Okay, we'll start off with our project B.
Okay, and then you can present the other one next week. Wednesday.
Okay.
Please state the names of your teammates and then go ahead and start.
Yeah, so my name's Xiomara Garcia, and my partner is Alexander Serby.
All right, so how do I present? Can you guys hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. So we did a project B, MySQL. And so what is MySQL? MySQL is a database management system. It's based on structured query language, or SQL. It's most commonly used for web databases, and it could be used to store anything from like a single record of information to an entire inventory of available products for an online store. They also have the CLI or GUI or command line interface or the graphical user interface you could choose between. They both work the same way. We're going to demo both of them. And the code it's compatible with is Java, C++, C, Perl, and PHP. PHP being the most popular because it's most commonly used for web databases.
Okay, so MySQL Workbench is described as a visual database design tool, which can include anywhere from data modeling, SQL development, server configuration, and user administrator. It's a single integrated development environment. MySQL Workbench consists of 3 main areas of functionality, which are MySQL, which is described as to create or manage connections to database servers. It'll provide capability to execute SQL queries on the database connections while using the installed built-in SQL editor. A second functionality would be data modeling, which enables the user to create models of the database schema graphically, back and forth between a schema and a live database. Alone, a user can edit all the attributes of the database using the table editor or alter table. And then the third functionality is server administrator, which enables the user to create and administer the server instance.
All right, so this is a picture of what the GUI looks like. It's called MySQL Workbench, and it's basically like a point and click version of MySQL versus like the command line interface, which is all through commands and typing. So I don't know if can you guys see my mouse?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so like basically you enter the query right here and it'll update the table in real time. So you can see as you are entering the commands for the SQL commands. And we'll also demo that too. You have your management toolbar instances, performances to see how your database is running and how the health is too. And it's just like a very in-depth version of how to manage the database.
So this is the installing process. In the first image, it shows how to install MySQL Workbench, which is sudo apt-get install MySQL Workbench. Once that's done, in the second image, it's to install the MySQL server, which is sudo apt-get install MySQL server. So images 1 and 2 are the commands to install Workbench and MySQL. And then moving on to the third image, which the command is sudo mysql _secure installation. That's to make a secure connection to the server. And then in the fourth image, the command is sudo mysql -u root-p. That's to log in through the command prompt. And U means user, and in our case, the user's root, and then P just represents our password.
All right, this is so that last slide showed how to log in to the MySQL server, it all makes sense when we demo it, but this is how it looks like to log into MySQL Workbench, the graphical user interface. I have 2 connections right here, our local instance connection and another connection I make project B. And then, so if I were to log in, I would just click on whichever one and it brings up the service we're using. We're on localhost, our port 33006. User is root, password is enter the password that I create, and it'll log me right in. So for our commands, we have so this is what it looks like in the terminal right here on the left-hand side and the Workbench on the right-hand side. We use a code select asterisk from our schema, which is system, and a schema just stores our tables, our functions, and our stored procedures right here, as you can see right here too. We tell it that we want to view from our schema, which is system, and our table, which we created patient table, which has 3 records. one column for patient ID, second one for first name, third one for last name. It stores each ID, first names and last names, Alexander Servin, Zumar Garcia, and John Doe. And once we select that command, it also shows it up in like a cool little interface right here on the terminal as well. So yeah.
This slide shows the being able to insert a new patient. So you would enter that command that's up on top, that insert into, says patient selection, and then you'd put like the variable names in the parentheses, values, and then in the parentheses with values, you would input the like what you would want the next user to be and the next patient ID number. So once you input that, then you'll how would I say it, like reboot the MySQL workbench by inputting the command select asterisk from sys patient selection, and then the output shows in that table in the terminal the new patient that was input.
Also, I want to point out how the way queries work is that in the order you want the information to be implemented has to be in the order you write the code. So patient ID, last name and first name, the values, we want 3 to be in patient ID, so it goes first. Then our last name, Calix, which goes second, and our Ricardo first name, which is last. So like if I were to switch our patient ID with our first name, then Ricardo would be in the patient ID and our actual patient ID would be in the first name column, which would be wrong. So I have to be careful with that when doing SQL queries. And so another command, these are all like basic general commands that administrators could use and probably use frequently as well. So we have our delete command is just to delete a record from the database. Again, we choose the schema we want to select it from, the patient table, or which table we want to select the record from, where we want to do it. We want to delete from where patient ID equals 3. So this command will find wherever in our database the patient ID equals 3, which was right here, which is now null because we deleted it. So when we press enter, it gives us an OK, which tells us that everything went smoothly. We select from patient tables again, which updates our table. As you can see, the third record is now gone. So that's that.
And then, yeah, so the update command allows the change. So in this example, it would have been, oh wait, was that the wrong slide?
This one's update.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. So in this slide, it shows the update command, which it's there, says patient, first name. So update command allows a change. So in this example, it would be Alex's name is now being changed to Michael. And we'll demo that too. And then the select command allows the display of the new updated table.
So we now demo it, going to our VM. So really, you could choose between the actual MySQL server and actually writing the code in the terminal, or if you prefer the workbench. I prefer the workbench just because everything is right there. Right there, you can see where everything is. But to log in, as we mentioned.
Yeah, so to log in, it'll be sudo mysql-u root-p. And then you'll enter the password, and then it'll open up.
Wait, oh snap.
Those welcome. Oh, what the heck?
Welcome.
Wait, no, you have to press enter again.
There it is. Okay. So yeah, we select our patient table, as you can see right here in our workbench. We have 2 records, patient ID is 1, 2, these records, and whatever These are connected to the same databases. So whatever's on here will appear on the actual terminal. As you can see, it's the same exact records. So if we want to insert a new record, let's say we want to re-enter Professor Calix's record. It's insert into our system, schema, patient table, patient ID, first name, last name, 3, Ricardo Calix. You enter it, query is okay, 1 row is affected. It doesn't update in real time, so you have to run the database again. And as you can see, the 3rd record appears here.
So then you'll do the select command, and then it should show up. Yep, right there. So then the next command that we demo would be the delete command. So we'd be deleting the 3rd patient again. Delete it, and then.
So when we run it, we could check on here if it worked.
And it did.
So that command is gone. We could also check on here too. 2 records only.
And then to update a name, say we're going to change patient 2's last name. So you'll input that command.
We changed Ziamara's last name to Johnson instead of Garcia. Enter it. Query's okay. We check it on here. Ziamara Johnson. It works out.
Check it in the terminal again. See if it updated, and it did. And that is our project.
All right, great. I like it. A couple of questions. Why use Workbench instead of PHP-MyAdmin? What's the advantage of that, do you think?
So I'm not too familiar with PHP-MyAdmin.
It's just a web. You can do queries and everything. I can see this is a little bit different. So it's not a trick question. I mean, it's just, I'm just curious if you guys know or anything like that.
No, I don't know too much about PHP-MyAdmin. I can see how they could be similar though. I heard a lot about it.
Yeah, it's just a web interface. This seems to be, this is not a web, is it? Or is it a web?
No, it's an application.
Yeah, so you started it on the terminal and it came up.
Yeah. Well, these could be independent. I could do everything on here. Or
Right.
I could do everything
No,
on
but I mean, this window, it's not a web browser, is it?
Oh, no, it's an application.
It's an application. Okay. All right. Okay, great. So that's great. So you can basically create, you know, a lot of sysadmin applications need a database, right? So
yeah,
Joey's previous. So then basically here you create the databases, you control access to the files. I see you have users there, privileges, right? That's general idea.
Yeah, you could edit privileges too. You alter the table and then fine tune the privileges here.
Okay, I see. So, all right, guys, do you have any questions for this group? Okay, it doesn't sound like there's any questions. Great job. Thank you very much, guys. So you will present your Hadoop project on Wednesday. All right, so that's all the time we have for today. I think we presented a lot of groups, right? You might still have a few left. So you still have, that's why I always leave out Wednesday. So make sure you guys finish up. On Wednesday, I'll be posting this video shortly. You guys can take a look if you'd like. All right, are there any questions?
Thank you, Professor.
Sure, no problem. Oh, I will be posting soon a link on Brightspace. It'll under a module called Project, if I don't have one of those already. And you can just submit your file. So what you can do is you can just zip, you know, if you had slides, code, you know, files, whatever you had, right? And a report. Put a lab report, and of course, I will post the videos, you know, so you can take a look at it. All right. So you'll submit your files on that link in that way. And also everyone in the group should submit, even if it's the same. So it makes it easier for me to grade that way. All right, so I'll stay for a couple of minutes. I'm going to stop the recording.